I had no medical difficulties whatsoever. I was tip-top shape. I ran, I swam, and I did the bike. I was very fit.
I was an athlete. I ran like a deer. I took great pride in the fact that at 41, I could hit the ball to the second baseman and still beat the ball to first. And I mean, that's how fast I was.
You are looking at somebody who in his younger years ran the mile on the track team in 5 minutes and 30 seconds. I was a gymnast. I played football. Listen to me now.
Now to go up 3 flights of stairs, I'm huffing and puffing.
I can't get my breath. I can't get enough oxygen.
My sinus tissue is totally destroyed.
Headaches, stomach aches, joint pains.
We were coughing. This symptom that became wide known in the medical profession as the World Trade Center cough.
I mean, when you have thousands and thousands of people suffering from the same symptom, that should give you a clue. We took the time to go down to ground zero, not to benefit ourselves, but to benefit our city and this nation.
You know, I went down there to help in any capacity, just as a concerned citizen.
You're under the impression that we gotta take care of our country.
We're the kind of people that rush into an emergency while others flee.
This is not a mayor or a governor or a president who is sitting in an ivory tower. I was at ground zero as often, if not more than most of the workers. I was exposed to exactly the same things they were exposed to. So, in that sense, I'm one of them.
I could tell you the only times we saw him down there pretty much was for press conferences with parading another prince or a sheik or Oprah or someone down there. And it really wasn't to help us.
I don't remember anybody eating for a long time, maybe the entire day. But I remember most of us wanting something to drink, clear our throats.
There were millions of microscopic shards of glass. There was asbestos, there was dioxin, there were polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. The first couple of days when there was still unburned jet fuel at the site, there were organic solvents, most notably benzene. Concentrations were very high, and the mixture of chemicals is a mix that's never previously been encountered.
I've lost a great deal of my breathing capacity. I suffer from restrictive airway disease. I have problems with my voice box.
Went to a private lung doctor, and he says, you have asthma. Asthma? What the hell are you talking about? I never had asthma in my life.
Still today, I cannot get any sleep unless I am medicated.
Now you're at home, you're sick, you're probably depressed because you're sick or things that you're re-experiencing, and now you have no money. And you have kids, and a spouse, and a car payment, maybe college bills, food, utilities, and no one seems to care.
We're being victimized by 9/11 twice. All these elected officials said that we're not going to forget, we're going to do what's right, and that's what they said right after 9/11. And now 6 years later, you can hear crickets. And one of the main persons I'm very disappointed in is Mayor Rudy Giuliani.
We haven't seen Mayor Giuliani help anybody.
When I see Rudy Giuliani, if I see it on TV, I just turn the TV off, because the hypocrisy of running a campaign on a 9/11 agenda and you having people still dying and still becoming much sicker than they were a year or 2 years prior, it's really insulting.
He'd have every right to run on that platform if he was helping us, if he was walking around with us, if he was coming to our meetings, if he was coming to our organizations, coming to our unions, coming to the city and saying, give these people their benefits, give them their comp, give them their medication, give them their treatment. But that's not happening.
I haven't heard a word out of you, sir, as far as what you're going to do for the 9/11 responders.
After he left office, I mean, you may have to turn in your key to the city, but I don't believe turning in your moral compass and your responsibility to the people who trust you, that shouldn't fall by the wayside.
We've been abandoned.
I want to know, you tell me, sit down, meet with me, meet with some of the responders, and you tell us what are your plans for what you're going to do for the 9/11 responders.
Mayor, what's the situation right now?
The situation is that two airplanes have attacked apparently.
He had made this colossal mistake of locating the command center in the only complex that had already been attacked by Islamic fundamentalists and that they vowed to return to.
The command center was built, but it was built in the wrong place, within the World Trade Center complex, the very place that had been attacked in 1993.
Why was he running that day and running around? Because he didn't have a command post, because he put it in the wrong place.
He had, put his bunker right in the most dangerous spot in the city for terrorists.
It was located there solely and completely because of Rudy Giuliani.
You put the Emergency Response Command Center in the World Trade Center in 1997, even though your director of emergency management recommended that you not put it there because it had been a target in 1993. Why'd you do that?
My director of emergency management recommended 7 World Trade Center.
I have no idea what he's talking about. Because we had already had a bombing in Lower Manhattan, and because I felt that Lower Manhattan would remain a target, that the best location would be out in Brooklyn.
I have got a copy right here of Jerry Hauer's directive to you, and there were meetings in which Jerry Hauer said that it's a bad idea, and the police chief, Howard Safer, said it was a bad idea?
Jerry Hauer recommended that.
He gets caught by Chris Wallace lying.
Then why did he say the building, he said it's not, the place in Brooklyn is not as visible a target as buildings in Lower Manhattan.
He recommended that site as the site that would be the best site. It was largely on his recommendation that site was selected.
It's just a flat-out lie. All the other options were taken away, and we kept being pushed back towards 7 World Trade Center. It was very clear the mayor was not going to go anywhere else but Lower Manhattan.
And we also had backup centers at the police department in Brooklyn. We had another backup center, and we had a virtual command center.
He has no idea what he's talking about. There was no virtual command center. We did not have a virtual capability outside of 7 World Trade Center. Again, he pulls words and ideas out of the air, but they're simply not true. The mayor told me that he'd like it in Lower Manhattan, within walking distance.
It was simply a situation of that facility being within walking distance of City Hall.
He felt that it'd be easier to get the press someplace near City Hall.
As a professor of fire science and related issues, emergency response and things, walking distance should never have anything to do with where you place an emergency operations center.
The city agreed to rent the vacant 23rd floor of World Trade Center 7 from Larry Silverstein, the leaseholder of the building, for $1.4 million a year for 20 years.
These politically wired people in the Giuliani administration came up with the World Trade Center floor as the ideal floor for this location.
There was a lot of opposition to it. I mean, certainly within the rank and file people involved in emergency management and those kind of issues and things.
I, at that point, didn't know of Rudy's relationship with the owner of that building.
To return the favor, Silverstein held a $100,000 fundraiser for Rudy on his yacht a month after the command center opened.
If you were not with him 100% and didn't support him 100%, they would basically cut your throat.
It cost the lives of first responders that day because the command center was located at the World Trade Center.
There were 60 firefighters killed in the Marriott. There was 121 killed in the North Tower, and the rest were killed in the South Tower. What would have been different had that command center been operational? The death toll for firefighters would probably have been cut in half. A lot of guys wouldn't have been going into the buildings or heading up the stairs, they would have been heading out. And probably guys in the North Tower would have gotten that message.
Making sure, for example, that if fire companies or groups of police officers are being brought into the scene, that they end up at the right locations. You know, we know, for example, that on 9/11, a lot of companies, it was very confusing to them because a lot of them had never been there before in the sense of responding to that complex, didn't actually know the numbering system of the buildings and things like that. And that's a situation where that Emergency Operations Center could play a much better role and be able to coordinate that kind of stuff.
Giuliani should have been like someplace roaring, screaming at the people to get out, run, run. But he ran himself.
He abandoned ship. He was a coward that day. The real heroes stayed to help people out and protect them.
Running on the street because he wasn't in the command center, that running played out in the media as being this on the street tough guy.
Television played a really critical role for Mayor Giuliani on 9/11. We certainly saw him at the disaster scene as soon as the buildings began to collapse, moving away from that area.
When you objectively look at the before, during, and after, there's really not much you can find that Rudy did right except for a very good television appearance.
I really don't know what he did that was so good. I know what my brother did. I know what the police officers did and what some of the really brave civilians did, but I certainly don't know what he did beyond looking really good on television.
The firefighters on 9/11 were carrying precisely the same radio that had malfunctioned during the response to the 93 bombing at precisely the same location.
This is something that they knew from 1993, that in the Trade Center and in buildings that size, the radios just were not adequate.
I lost my son Jimmy on 9/11. From what I heard from people that survived, that they saw him up around the 30th floor, and he never made it out. He never heard the call to get out.
I blame this totally on Rudy Giuliani. He knew they had a problem with those radios. Why didn't he do something about it?
Giuliani became mayor in '94, and he knew he had the report right in his hands, and it said that the radios did not work, the communication to the World Trade Center, and that day was horrible in '93.
It was well documented that these radios didn't work, and then the signal wasn't strong enough to communicate.
The other principal problem with the radios is that the fire department radios couldn't communicate with the police department radios. This is called interoperability.
What did Mr. Giuliani do from the beginning of his administration? He had 8 years. He did nothing to correct that situation. We got people dead as a result.
After years of inaction, the Giuliani administration finally ordered new radios in 2001. Radios that were never field tested and obtained from Motorola in a no-bid contract.
Spring of 2001, brand new radios are introduced. They're introduced without any pilot testing.
They just ordered these radios on their own. They never field tested them, and they never did anything.
So not only did they take forever to deal with the radio problem, they made all the wrong decisions up the line in picking the radio that would be used.
When these new radios were put in service, they lasted 1 week.
Within a week, the new inadequate radios almost killed a firefighter when his mayday went unheard that he was lost. So it took them 8 years to give us radios that had never been tested.
There was a lot of skullduggery, as I call it, that went on between Motorola and the city of New York.
The
thing was that they've always bought only Motorola. They would never buy anybody else's, and they'll create enough obstacles so it makes it, there's no way you can win it.
Why was everybody else closed out of bidding on this?
Motorola has a very overly close relationship with the communications people in the city. Far too close than any vendor I've ever seen. And it's not a good thing.
So here you have a contract that goes from $1 point something million to $14 million in a weekend. Things just don't add up.
The new radios had to be recalled as a result of their complete failure. Firefighters were reissued the old radios that malfunctioned in 1993. And on 9/11, the consequences would prove to be deadly.
It's documented that the police in the helicopter saw the towers leaning and knew the towers were ready to come down.
They're up in the sky, they're looking at the towers, they're predicting the partial collapse, at least of both towers, 10, 15 minutes before either tower collapsed.
They issued a vacate order for, and who heard it was the cops.
And the police, got out of the area. That information was never relayed to us.
Not a single cop was lost in the North Tower because they had heard the message.
121 firefighters in North Tower didn't have that option.
Exactly what's going on, Kate. We are unable to make any kind of communication.
Their radios failed them, and that was Giuliani failing them.
Their willingness, the way I describe it, to stand their ground and not retreat. And the fact that so many of them interpreted it that way kept a much calmer situation and a much better evacuation.
To say they heard the command to get out and didn't.
And disobeyed their orders. No.
It was such an unbelievable statement.
That our sons practically wanted to die. I know for sure, our son would definitely have come out, he was just so living, he so wanted to live.
I didn't take the job to commit suicide.
The media is not digging in and trying to really find out about Motorola.
I want to know why Motorola got the contract when they could not provide the department with an adequate radio, and why they were given such an outrageous contract. That's what I want to know.
What was Rudy Giuliani doing for the last 7 years?
You have to ask yourself, did Rudy prepare?
What job did he do?
Why is there such a deep, deep concern for not finding the truth?
I want accountability.
Where was everybody? Where was the people we depend on?
Psst.